Thank you for listening to Heart Chat Stories. Every story is written with love, to heal, to inspire, and to remind you that new beginnings are always possible. If this touched your heart, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share so others can find healing through story. Until next time, keep your heart open and your spirit lifted.
It was one of those days for Kyren, the kind where the walls felt safer than the world outside. He had no desire to run errands, no spark of motivation to wrestle with traffic or spend 60 minutes pushing a cart through the store. Groceries could wait. Kerri had always handled the shopping. She made sure the cupboard stayed full, just as Kyren kept the house in working order. Together, they balanced life with ease. A quiet smile tugged at his lips as he lifted a weak cup of coffee to his mouth. Kerri's coffee had always been stronger, richer, like her presence. Now she was gone. Just like that, he was a bachelor again. With a sigh, Kyren pulled out his phone and ordered groceries online. It was easier than facing the silence of the aisles. Better to stay home. Better to write. He was a ghostwriter for a high-profile publishing platform and a YouTube content creator with a steady audience. His days, since Kerri's leaving, had blurred into work and long stretches of imagining she might walk back through the door. He knew she wouldn't. Still, the picture of her return lived in his head, and he clung to it like a familiar dream. His career thrived. Ideas poured through him faster than he could type. The money was good, the audience loyal. Yet every success carried Kerri's voice in the background, urging him to travel, to explore, to take advantage of the freedom his work allowed. She had always seen more for him than he could see for himself. It wasn't long before the doorbell rang. Kyren waited a moment, then stepped out to grab his groceries, only to stop short. A young woman sat on the porch, clutching her ankle. The delivery bags were scattered on the steps beside her. She had tripped over one of the uneven pavers and was now wincing in pain. Kyren hurried over. "Did you sprain your ankle?" She kept her head down beneath the brim of her cap, eyes fixed on her ankle. Finally, she looked up, her face tightening. "I don't know, I just can't put pressure on it." Kyren cursed under his breath, frustrated with himself. He'd been meaning to fix that loose paver. Now someone was hurt on his porch because he hadn't.
"I know you don't know me," he said carefully, "but let me help you inside. I can get some ice for it."
Her lips quirked. "So you can kill me?" Kyren blinked.
"What? No. I just want you to be comfortable and out of the sun."
She laughed when she saw how seriously he'd taken her. "Relax. The app knows where I am. If you try anything, I'm sure they'll catch you before you make it out of the country." Despite the joke, she lifted her hand, letting him help her up. "Good thing you're my first order of the day," she said with a half smile. "I haven't signed on for another delivery yet." Kyren shook his head.
"I'll give you extra for your trouble. Here, sit on the sofa right here."
"I didn't say it for extra," she replied quickly as she lowered herself onto the cushion. "I said it because I don't want my ratings to tank." Kyren placed a few extra pillows on the sofa and gently propped up her ankle.
"I'm going to get you some ice from the kitchen. What's your name?" he asked.
"Well, Kyren, my name is Carrie."
Kyren froze. "Your name is what? And wait, how do you know my name?"
Kerri pushed herself up slightly, wincing. "It's on the app. When I deliver to someone, it shows me their name. And yes, my name is Carrie."
"Oh, okay, Carrie," Kyren said, a little embarrassed. "I'll go get the ice."
"Wait," she stopped him. "You might want to bring your groceries in off the porch first. And could you grab my keys from the ignition? I'm not going anywhere for a while." Kyren nodded and went to gather the grocery bags. On his way to her SUV, he noticed how spotless and well-kept it was. Nice ride for a delivery driver, he thought as he pulled the keys from the ignition. Back inside, he filled a plastic bag with ice and set it carefully on Carrie's ankle. "Do you have any ibuprofen?" she asked, the pain starting to set in.
"Yeah, I'll grab some."
Kyren headed to the medicine cabinet, returned with the bottle. His mind caught on her name again, Kerri. So close to Carrie, his wife's name. Too close. He shook the thought away, not ready to go there. "Kyren?" Carrie's voice broke into his thoughts. "I'll need some water to swallow these."
"Oh, right."
He quickly grabbed a bottle of water and handed it to her. Kyren shifted uneasily, unsure if he'd done enough.
"Do you have everything you need? I mean, should I call someone for you?"
Carrie shook her head. "No, it's fine. I live in the city by myself. My parents and siblings are nowhere near here. But I texted my friends Lawrence and Casey. They'll come as soon as they get off work." She adjusted her ankle, wincing a little, then looked up at him. "Would you mind if I just hung out here until they come pick me up?"
"Of course," Kyren said without hesitation. "Make yourself comfortable. I just need to send a couple of emails, but I'll come back and keep you company."
Carrie nodded, settling back against the pillows. When Kyren returned a short while later, the living room was quiet. Carrie had drifted off to sleep, her cap slipping from her head and resting on the sofa. Kyren stopped in his tracks. Her smooth brown skin caught the light from the window, warm and soft against the shadows of the room. Her hair spilled toward her shoulders, framing her face in a way that made her look both peaceful and strong. He hadn't expected the jolt that ran through him. Surprise tightened his chest. He hadn't felt that kind of pull toward anyone since Carrie. The thought unsettled him, like he was betraying something sacred. And yet, no matter how hard he tried, he couldn't look away. Kyren lingered a moment longer, watching Carrie's chest rise and fall in the rhythm of sleep. He caught himself staring and shook his head. "What am I doing?" he thought. "She's a delivery driver who just twisted her ankle on my porch. That's it." Still, as he stepped into the kitchen, he couldn't shake the image of her face. How soft her features looked in the quiet. How natural it felt to have someone else in the house again. His hands moved automatically, laying out bread, slicing tomatoes, reaching for cheese, but his mind was elsewhere. He remembered how Carrie used to tease him for his overstuffed sandwiches, how she would laugh and pull half the layers out before she took a bite. Now, here he was, making lunch for another woman, not because he had to, but because he wanted to. That realization stopped him. He leaned on the counter, knife in hand, and let out a long breath. Wanting to take care of someone, wanting her to feel at home here. It wasn't just about kindness anymore. He glanced back toward the living room where Carrie still slept. Something about her, her easy humor, the way she trusted him enough to rest here, was chipping at the walls he'd built since Carrie left. He wasn't ready for it. But the spark was there, undeniable. With a sigh, Kyren stacked the sandwiches on a plate, added a handful of chips, and set out 2 glasses of water. As he worked, he found himself hoping she'd wake soon, not just because she needed to eat, but because he suddenly wanted to hear her voice again. Carrie stirred, blinking against the soft afternoon light. The first thing she noticed was the smell. Warm bread, a hint of mustard, the unmistakable comfort of something homemade. She sat up slowly, her cap sliding further down the sofa, and found a plate waiting on the coffee table. "You made me lunch?" she asked, surprised. Kyren gave a small shrug, setting his own plate down. "Seemed better than letting you starve on my couch." She picked up the sandwich and took a generous bite. Her eyes widened as she chewed, and when she finally swallowed, she grinned. "Okay, were you a sandwich artist in a past life?" Kyren chuckled, shaking his head. No, I'm a writer. Kerri tilted her head, smirking. A writer, huh? That explains the careful layering. You stack sandwiches the way you stack words. Her laugh filled the room, light and teasing. For the first time that day, Kyren felt his shoulders ease. Well, she went on, taking another bite, you can relax. I'm not going to press charges for the dangerous paver incident. She leaned in with mock seriousness. And I definitely won't call the delivery police on you. Kyren laughed, more nervously than he meant to, but it came out genuine enough. Good to know. I was already planning my escape route, just in case. Carrie tapped her finger against the plate. See? Writer brain. Always imagining the drama. For a moment, their eyes caught, and Kyren felt that unexpected spark again. But this time, it didn't feel so heavy. It felt easy. Carrie caught the way Kyren's eyes lingered on her a little too long. It wasn't uncomfortable, just charged. She let herself study him in return. The man had that writer stereotype look down to a science. Black-rimmed glasses, a touch of mystery in his expression, and the kind of presence that invited curiosity. Nerdy sexy, she thought with a grin she hid behind her sandwich. He didn't look like a gym rat, but when he'd helped her into the house, she'd felt the strength in his arms. Fit, tall, 6'2" to her 5'7", and somehow both protective and unassuming. Surprisingly, she felt safe here, safe with him. And that thought, considering he was a stranger, unsettled her in a strangely good way. Kyren finally broke the silence, his voice softer than she expected. So, how long have you been delivering groceries? Carrie set her sandwich down and leaned back against the pillows. Honestly, not that long. I only do it sometimes. My real job is freelance graphic design. I actually own my own business. Kyren nodded, impressed. That's a good setup, especially for someone who works from home. She smirked, shaking her head. Oh, I don't work from home much. I'm a coffee shop regular. Sometimes bookstores. Beachside when I can get away. I've even worked in a high-rise hotel just for the view. Kyren raised an eyebrow. So you like variety? Exactly. Her eyes lit up. I like to travel. That's why I chose graphic design. I can take it anywhere. When I was studying, I did delivery driving to pay my way through school. Now I do it every once in a while, mostly for a little nostalgia. She tilted her head, studying him again. What about you? Where do you prefer to write? Kyren hesitated, adjusting his glasses as if buying time. Honestly, I mostly write here, at home. It's quiet, predictable, no distractions. He gave a small, self-deprecating smile. Not very adventurous, I guess. Carrie tilted her head, studying him. So you're more of a home base kind of guy. Yeah, he admitted. Then his voice softened, almost thoughtful. Though, it wasn't always like that. Carrie, my wife, used to tell me I should try writing anywhere and everywhere. She said stories live in the places people forget to look. He paused, realizing how easily her name had slipped out. I used to imagine it, he went on quietly. Coffee shops, airports, maybe even the beach. Just taking my laptop and working wherever the mood hit. But after I guess I pulled back. Writing here felt safer, controlled. He looked down at his plate, pushing a chip around with his finger. Lately, though, I've been wondering if maybe she was right. Maybe I should get out more. Carrie's eyes softened, her sandwich forgotten on the plate. What happened to your wife? She asked gently, her voice careful but full of curiosity. Kyren drew in a slow breath, bracing himself. She died about 2.5 years ago. His gaze drifted past Carrie, to some memory he still carried like a shadow. One day she was planning our 5th anniversary, and the next, he swallowed hard. She was gone. taken in her sleep by a brain aneurysm. No warning, just. He snapped his fingers quietly. Gone. Silence hung in the room for a beat, broken only by the hum of the refrigerator in the kitchen. Before she could think twice, Kerri reached out and laid her hand over his. The gesture was automatic, instinctive, warm. She felt a surge of something rush through her chest. Sympathy, yes, but also attraction. "I'm so sorry," she said softly. That's not something you just get over." Kyren looked down at her hand resting on his, surprised by how natural it felt there. He gave a small, grateful nod. "No, you don't get over it. You just learn how to live around it." Carrie studied him, her heart tugging. He barely knows me, and he just shared one of the most painful parts of his life. That kind of openness wasn't weakness, it was brave. And something about his honesty pulled her closer to him, even as a stranger. Her thumb brushed lightly against the back of his hand before she realized it, and she quickly drew back, clearing her throat. "Well, for what it's worth, I think she was right. Maybe you should try writing in more places. Who knows what it might open up for you?" Kyren managed a faint smile, though his chest still ached. "Maybe you're right." 2 days later, Carrie stirred awake to the buzz of her phone. Blinking at the screen, she saw Kyren's name. "Mind if I send you lunch and dinner today?" A smile tugged at her lips. She was still camped out at Casey's place since her ankle refused to hold her weight. She typed back quickly. "Don't send dinner. Come have it with me. Casey and Lawrence have a date tonight, and I don't want to eat alone." There was a pause, long enough for her to wonder if she'd overstepped, before his reply came. "Are you sure?" "Yes. Bring your laptop." That evening, Kyren arrived with bags of Italian takeout in hand. The smell of garlic and roasted tomatoes filled the kitchen as he set the containers on the table. He even pulled out his laptop, arranging the space so they could eat, work, and talk without rushing. Carrie watched him fuss with the setup and grinned. "So, you finally got out of the house to write. All it took was me asking." Kyren slid into the chair across from her, his expression caught between playful and sincere. "Careful, you might find you can get me to do a lot of things." The words hung there, heavier than he intended. He liked spending time with her, more than he should, maybe. Carrie's heart skipped, the shift in the air impossible to ignore. But then she told herself it couldn't mean what it sounded like. He's still grieving, that's all this is. She forced a light laugh and waved it off. "Guess I'll add professional motivator to my resume then," she teased. Kyren, watching her smile across the table, wondered if he was falling for someone he'd only just met. When Kyren finally got home that night, he expected the quiet to close in on him the way it usually did. But it didn't. His phone buzzed almost as soon as he dropped his keys on the counter. Kerri. What started as a simple check-in stretched into 2 hours of back-and-forth texts, light teasing, work talk, and little glimpses of each other's worlds. She told him she was already planning a work outing for them once her ankle healed. Kyren stared at the screen longer than he should have, the corners of his mouth lifting in a smile he hadn't worn in years. The idea both thrilled and unsettled him. For the first time since Carrie died, he felt the pull of anticipation, of wanting to show up for something beyond his work, beyond his grief. Carrie's presence, even through a phone screen, stirred something inside him he thought had been buried forever. Across town, Carrie lay awake on Casey's couch, ankle throbbing less now, but her thoughts racing more. She scrolled back through Kyren's messages, rereading the lines that had made her laugh, and the one where he hinted he might do a lot of things for her. She knew he was still grieving, but there was something about him, something steady, something untapped, that felt worth exploring. Kyren leaned back in his chair, a mischievous glint in his eye. "So, what are you planning to do with all the money you swindled out of me?" Kerri raised an eyebrow, smirking over the rim of her coffee cup. "Swindled? Please, that was hazard pay." He chuckled. "Fair enough. So, big plans?" She set her cup down and folded her arms. "Actually, yes. I'm going to visit a beachside resort in California. Take some time off, soak up the sun. It isn't the one villa I wanted that was right on the beach, but it will do." The words landed heavier than she expected. Kyren felt a twinge in his chest, something that sounded a lot like missing her, even though she was still right there across the table. Carrie noticed the flicker in his expression. Before she could second-guess herself, she said, "You know, if you want, you could come. The villa I rented sleeps 4. You could work, enjoy the beach. It might be good for you." Her offer seemed to hang in the air between them. Kyren's mind immediately replayed Carrie's old words. "You should write everywhere, anywhere. Stories live in places people forget to look." The memory brushed against him like a whisper, both comforting and unsettling. When his eyes met Carrie's again, she looked suddenly uneasy, stirring her coffee without drinking it. "I'm sorry, was that too much? I didn't mean to overstep. There's no pressure if you're not ready." Kyren tilted his head. Ready for what? Carrie hesitated, gaze drifting toward the window. "I don't even know," she thought. Ready to travel? Ready to let someone in? Ready to move forward? She couldn't answer without exposing too much. The table fell into a thoughtful silence. They both opened their laptops, the sound of typing filling the quiet in place of words. After a while, Carrie packed up her things. "I should go," she said softly. Kyren nodded, watching her walk out the door. Alone again, he sat back and replayed the moment in his head, the offer, her vulnerability, his hesitation. Was I ready? He wondered. We're just friends, right? But deep down, even as he told himself that, he wasn't sure he believed it. Carrie wheeled her suitcase across the airport floor, the buzz of travelers around her doing little to quiet her thoughts. She should have been focused on the flight ahead, on the warm stretch of California sun waiting for her. Instead, her mind kept circling back to Kyren. She hadn't expected him to slip into her life the way he had, quietly, almost cautiously, yet somehow filling spaces she hadn't realized were empty. His company had been easy, grounding. She liked the way he listened, really listened, and how he had shown up for her without asking for anything in return. She told herself she would be fine if they stayed friends, if that's all it ever was. But honesty pressed its way into her chest. She found him attractive. Not just in the obvious ways, though the height, the glasses, and that quiet strength weren't lost on her, but in the way he carried himself. Kind, selfless, steady. So many men she'd dealt with in the past had rushed things, pressing too fast, too hard, as if her worth boiled down to how quickly she'd give in. But Kyren was different. He hadn't pushed, hadn't even hinted, and that made him all the more appealing. Still, a flicker of impatience crossed her mind. He was a man, wasn't he? A man with needs, like any other. She knew about his wife, about the grief that still wrapped around him like a shadow. She respected that. She didn't want to rush him, but she also couldn't help wondering if part of him longed for more, the way she did. Settling into her seat at the gate, Carrie sighed and leaned back.
Maybe this trip would give him time to sort through what he wanted. And maybe, just maybe, she hoped that when she came back, the writer with the melancholy eyes and steady heart would be ready for something more. That night, Kyren sat at his kitchen table, laptop open, the cursor blinking accusingly on a blank page. He was supposed to be outlining a new client project, but his focus had slipped away hours ago. The house felt too quiet, too empty. Carrie was gone, on her trip, chasing sun and salt air on the California coast. He'd told himself it was no big deal. They were just friends after all. But as the minutes stretched on, he found himself glancing at his phone more than once, half expecting a text from her. It wasn't just her presence he missed. It was the way she filled space, the lightness she carried, the humor that broke through his own heaviness without even trying. She had been in his life for such a short time, yet her absence already pressed down like weight. Kyren leaned back in his chair and rubbed his face. The truth was, he liked her. More than he wanted to admit. More than he knew how to handle. And that scared him, because every time he felt that spark of attraction, guilt followed. His mind went back to Kerri, her laughter, her warmth, the life they had planned. How could he want someone else when part of him still belonged to her? Was it betrayal to let his eyes linger on Kerri's smile? To imagine what it might feel like to reach for her hand and not pull away? But the desire was there, gnawing at him. The awareness of her. The way her voice softened when she said his name. The brush of her fingers on his arm that lingered longer in his memory than it should have. He shut the laptop with a sigh and leaned his elbows on the table. She deserves better than a man still haunted by ghosts, he thought. And yet another thought whispered back, maybe she's exactly what I need to remember how to live. Kyren turned off the light and climbed into bed, the sheets cold against his skin. He stared at the ceiling, listening to the hum of the house. And for the first time in a long while, he didn't just miss Carrie. He missed Kerri. Kerri's phone buzzed as the plane rolled to a stop on the tarmac. She sent Kyren a quick text. Landed safe in California. Sunshine already feels better than ibuprofen. She grinned at her own joke, then added, though technically this trip is your fault. If it weren't for your faulty front porch, I wouldn't have been sidelined long enough to plan it. The thought made her giggle. The way to a man's heart is through injury, she mused, shaking her head. Almost immediately after, her phone chimed again. Not Kyren this time, but an alert from the rental company. Her villa wasn't ready yet. The last guests had been late leaving. Carrie frowned. She hoped everything was okay, even though this villa wasn't her first choice. The one she'd wanted, right on the beach, had been unavailable because of some kind of leak. She still wanted her trip to be the perfect getaway. Instead, she'd settled on a high-rise villa just a few blocks away. The photos had promised sweeping views of the ocean, and she figured a breeze with a view wasn't such a bad trade. With a couple of hours to kill, Carrie did what she always did best. She searched for a coffee shop. Within 20 minutes, she had her laptop open, a latte by her side, and her fingers flying across the keyboard. Work always grounded her, and once she got into the flow, she could feel her whole body ease. Later, she promised herself, I'll walk down to the beach, take in the sights, and let the ocean do its magic. And somewhere in the back of her mind, she wondered if Kyren was picturing her there too. Kyren couldn't sleep. He'd tossed and turned, the sheets twisting around him, his mind circling the same thoughts until they blurred into exhaustion. Finally, he gave up and did what he always did best. He worked. But tonight, it wasn't ghostwriting for clients or drafting someone else's story. It was something different, something personal. It had been a month since Carrie had stumbled, literally, into his life. One fateful accident on his porch, and suddenly he wasn't drowning in silence anymore. She had pulled him back, without even trying,
from the depths of a grief he'd thought permanent. And now, sitting at his desk with the glow of the laptop painting shadows across his face, Kyren admitted something he hadn't said out loud. He owed her. More than she could ever recognize. More than she would probably ever let him repay. But gratitude needed form, and Kyren knew exactly how to give it. His fingers hovered over his contacts list, scrolling past names of editors, brand consultants, and publishing executives he'd built relationships with over the years. Kerri thought of herself as just a freelance graphic designer, but Kyren had seen her work, seen the brilliance in it. She deserved more eyes on her talent, more opportunities than delivery driving for nostalgia or extra cash. And he had just the clients to make that happen. 4 hours later, Kerri was still parked at the little coffee shop she'd stumbled upon. Normally she would have been restless by now, but thank God for airplane naps. If she hadn't managed a few hours of sleep on the flight, she would have been cranky enough to scare off the barista. Instead, she found herself in surprisingly good spirits. She stretched, sipped the last of her now cold latte, and decided she deserved another. As she carried the fresh cup back to her table, her phone buzzed. A message from the rental company. Apologies for the delay. As compensation, we've issued a refund of half your trip. Your villa is now ready. Here's the address. Kerri blinked at the screen, then grinned. Half her trip refunded? That was practically a blessing wrapped in an inconvenience. She quickly copied the address and plugged it into her transport app. Gathering her bags, she felt a flicker of excitement. A new space, a new view, a chance to breathe. And maybe, just maybe, a little room to sort out how much she already missed talking to Kyren. The transport car slowed to a stop and Kerri leaned forward, peering out the window. Her villa sat right on the beach, waves rolling in like a private orchestra. She double-checked the address on her phone. Correct. Her heart skipped as she stepped out, dragging her suitcase behind her. She entered the code at the door, and when it clicked open, she pushed it wide with eager anticipation. The moment she stepped inside, she saw straight through the open living room windows, out to the expanse of ocean. The horizon stretched endlessly, sun glinting off the water, and the salty breeze rushed to meet her. It was everything she'd wanted, everything she'd pictured. She set her suitcase down, drawn forward by the view. That's when her eyes caught something on the counter. A sandwich. Not just any sandwich. That sandwich. The kind layered with precision. A stack of flavors tucked perfectly between 2 slices of bread. The kind only one sandwich artist she knew could ever pull off. Her heart leapt into her throat. "Kyren?" she called, half laughing, half breathless. No answer. She checked the bedrooms. Empty. Her pulse quickened. "Kyren!" she called again, louder this time. Then she saw it through the back doors. Soft light strung low. A blanket laid out on the sand. The faint silhouette of a man standing by the waves. Her hands fumbled with her bag, belongings tumbling as she abandoned them. She grabbed the sandwich like it was proof she wasn't imagining things and hurried out onto the sand. The figure turned, and when she saw the grin, his grin, her pace quickened until she was running. Kyren stood tall, waiting as she closed the space between them. When she reached him, she dropped the sandwich onto the blanket and looked up into his steady, writer's eyes. Her chest heaved with the rush of it all. "May I kiss you?" she asked, voice low but fierce with need. Kyren swallowed hard, his glasses catching the glow of the lights. He hadn't kissed another woman since Carrie. The thought gripped him, but so did the pull of Carrie, undeniably now. He steadied himself, forcing the words out with a small, teasing smile. "With or without my glasses on?" Carrie's lips curved into a smile that reached her eyes. She rose on her toes,
sliding a hand behind his neck. "With," she whispered. Her mouth met his, soft at first, testing, tasting, then deeper, hungrier. The kiss wasn't polite or cautious or fleeting. It was the kind of kiss that unraveled weeks of unspoken tension, the kind that poured out all the feelings they hadn't dared to name. For Kyren, it was oxygen after years of holding his breath. For Kerri, it was confirmation of what she already knew. This was something she wanted more of, something he desperately needed. When they finally pulled apart, foreheads still pressed together, Kyren let out a shaky breath. He didn't say the words forming on his tongue, not yet, but the look in his eyes told her everything. He was alive again. Kerri pulled back just enough to breathe, her heart still racing from the kiss. 100 questions ran through her mind. How had he arranged this? How had he even gotten here? How had he known where to find her? But none of it mattered. She had him here, on this beach, in this moment. She smiled, brushing her thumb lightly against his jaw. "I should probably ask how you pulled all of this off," she said softly, "but I don't care right now." Kyren's eyes crinkled with the faintest smile, a mixture of relief and something deeper, something unspoken but shared. Kerri let out a laugh, full and genuine. "I've got a friend here, someone I can share getaways with, and maybe," her voice lowered, her gaze never leaving his, "something more. A budding love in the middle of an imperfect situation." Kyren's chest tightened at her words, but instead of speaking, he pulled her gently into his arms again. She could ask later. She could untangle the details when the sun was up, when work tugged at her, when reality demanded explanations. But not tonight. Tonight wasn't for questions. Tonight was for this. Sitting on a blanket under the string of soft lights, the ocean singing just beyond them, and the quiet certainty that whatever this was between them, it was worth holding on to. Kyren rested his head on top of Kerri's head. For the first time in a long while, he didn't want to work. Kyren rested his head on top of Kerri's head. For the first time in a long while, he didn't want to work, didn't want to plan. He just wanted to enjoy every single moment with Kerri. Thank you for listening to Heart Chat Stories. Every story is written with love, to heal, to inspire, and to remind you that new beginnings are always possible. If this touched your heart, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share so others can find healing through story. Until next time, keep your heart open and your spirit lifted.